Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, guys, whether you're watching me on YouTube, on Rumble, and on X. You have posed many questions in the past few live streamings. Unfortunately, I was engaged and trying to listen to the guests, so I couldn't really answer to all of your questions. Therefore, wanted to give you also the opportunity to ask me some questions because we are living in exceptional times. I want everybody to understand that we are living in a very dangerous and exceptional times. And eventually, this is most likely going to lead into a big war in West Asia or in the Middle East. I hope that I am wrong on this case. However, all the indications are that we are slowly but surely heading to an all-out war in the region, and this is going to have a devastating consequences on you, on me, and hundreds of millions of people around the world, because the war in the Middle East is going to have global ramifications, and the trade routes, the energy supply lines, the food supply lines, and all sorts of products that we need on our daily basis in order to survive. So this is not a scenario that we have to celebrate. However, there is a circle or a cycle of history that such events unfortunately happen for these struggling powers to understand where the balance of power lies. Now, before I start answering to your questions, I would like to mention a few things. You know that Iran retaliated against Israel, and this was my opinion that this was a massive retaliation attack against Israel. And from the footage that I've seen, around 70 to 80% of the missiles have hit their targets. Now, Israel, the pro-Israel media, the United States administration, and everyone who revolves in this orbit, they have ridiculed these attacks, and they said that this has not done any damage to Israel, and the damage was minimum, and therefore Israel has become victorious again, and so there is no need for further discussion about this case. Now, this is completely false, of course, because the attack on Israel has inflicted heavy damage to airports and also to the Mossad headquarters. And most importantly, people need to understand that one of the legs that Israel stands on is deterrence and the image that it presents itself, that it is an invincible force, invincible army, and any power around the world cannot really match the military of Israel. And Israel has a strong military defense capacity and is capable of deterring such attacks or containing such attacks and repelling such attacks. However, the experience of the past few months has proven to us that Israel alone cannot defend itself. Every time there is going to be a massive attack against Israel, the United States sends its warships and aircraft carriers and also installs its air defenses to shield Israel. Also, some of the neighboring countries, for example, Jordan, participate in defending Israel. The UK comes in defense of Israel from the Mediterranean because they have a base in Cyprus. And additionally, there are other regional countries supplying Israel with intelligence support and also military support in order to repel this attack. So, in my opinion, the entire collective West is on the side of Israel, trying to defend Israel and also some of the Arabic countries in this case. Therefore, Israel alone cannot really fight this conflict against Iran. And speaking of Iran, now there is a report published by the Military Watch magazine, and I'm going to read some of the information in this magazine for you to understand what happened on this day, and then we're going to answer to your questions. So, to begin, this is from the Military Watch magazine. A massive Iranian ballistic missile strike on targets in Israel launched on October the 1st has targeted Nevatim Air Base, among other key targets in the country. The facility hosts both of the Israeli Air Force's F-35 fifth generation fighter squadrons, and was previously intended to host a third squadron of the fighters after they were delivered. Iranian media sources have reported that the facility was, quote, completely destroyed in the attack. Footage from Israel has confirmed the impact of dozens of ballistic missiles, which Israel's air defense networks failed to shoot down, with target impacted including the headquarters of the intelligence agency Mossad, located in Tel Aviv, which was leveled by the attack. Labeled, quote, True Promise 2, the operation follows a year of escalating tensions between Tehran and Tel Aviv and represents a long awaited retaliatory attack after the Israeli strike on Tehran on July 31st. Iran was previously reported to have agreed not to retaliate if Israel de escalated hostilities, with Israel's invasion and intensive bombardment of Lebanon and assassination of the leadership of the Iranian aligned militia group Hezbollah having been seen to have broken this agreement. Now, there is also reports coming from Lebanon, especially by the foreign minister of Lebanon, saying that Hassan Nasrallah himself agreed to a ceasefire agreement with Israel. However, 2 days later, Israel assassinated him, and also the president of Iran said that they were promised that the collective West will impose a ceasefire in Gaza. Therefore, they didn't retaliate after Haniyeh's assassination. However, the West has betrayed them again. So those were the developments indicated politically or diplomatically. However, on the military aspect, the reports have indicated that the bulk of Nevatim air bases, F-55s, over 20 fighters were destroyed in the attack, with the stealth fighters representing one of the most high-value targets in Israel. The facility has been widely referred to as Israel's most important air base due to the importance of the F-35 in the country's fleet. Israel fields just 2 squadrons of the costly stealth jets and relies on them heavily, as the remainder of the fighter fleet relies on largely obsolete avionics and old mechanically scanned array radars. F-35s play a central role in the Israeli plans for potential attacks on Iran, with their stealth capabilities and advanced avionics, including electronic warfare systems and other air defense suppression features, making them optimal assets for such operations. So, according to this report, the Iranian side have destroyed multiple of these F-35s. Now we have satellite images, which doesn't show much, but it shows some of the impact of the, let's say, Iranian attacks against the air bases. And this is a satellite imagery which shows the aftermath of the Iranian missile strike on an Israeli air bases. In the image below, an aircraft hangar has been hit with near perfect accuracy. So you see, this is the photo, right? There is a big blackout over the information, and we don't know much of this attack on the Israeli side. However, the footage, the amateur footage that we have seen in the past few days, indicates that many of these missiles have hit their targets, and there was a big failure for the Israeli air defense systems. And this is something that I want to stress on, because I watched several video reportages on Sky News, BBC, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and many other on X, because since I start following certain topics, these videos pop up to my timeline. So I want to see what they say in the mainstream press. And there is a scripted narrative, which is, of course, distributed to these media outlets to say that the attack was complete failure and only few rockets and missiles went through the air defenses of Israel, which is completely false. And we're here presenting to you the complete facts. Now, I personally think that Netanyahu will not swallow this attack. And if it was a failure, look, Israel, after the Iranian attack, is faced with 2 scenarios. One, they would say this is a complete failure and we deterred, or we contained and repelled the attack. So you, Iran, failed. So they don't take escalatory steps, or they do their calculation and they will evaluate the damage. And the truth of the matter is that Iran has inflicted heavy damage to Israel, so they will retaliate and they will attack harsher. And they have to take a step ahead of Iran in order to preserve the deterrence. And this is what is going to happen, in my opinion. And this is what I predict. And I made a short video about this. I'm going to show you this short video in this case, and how this entire case has been developed and why Iran retaliated and why I think that Netanyahu will not climb down the tree. Take a look. The Iranian retaliation against Israel was very remarkable. And if you want to understand why Iran decided to retaliate in a forceful way against Israel, we have to address the context and the details in the past few months. First of all, after the assassination of the leader of the political bureau of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, inside Iran, there was a discussion, a debate in Iran itself on how to retaliate against Israel. Now, personally, I said back then that Iran is in a big dilemma. If they respond, this will lead into another response from Israel, and then the war will become direct between Iran, Israel, and behind it, the United States. And if it doesn't respond, then the balance of power or the deterrence equation will be shifted again. And this is what happened because the reformists in Iran were hesitant to respond against the Israelis, and the deterrence has been shaken in favor of Israel. And this has led into a series of events which were blow after blow after blow against Iran. It started with the pagers electronic cyber attack, which was a huge terrorist attack, state terrorism by Israel against Lebanon. Then it led to series of assassinations of the leadership of Hezbollah, including the leader of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And this also led to the carpet bombing of Lebanon, and especially the southern suburbs of Beirut, which is called Al-Dahiyeh, and then the preparation of Israel for a ground invasion of Lebanon. So from Iran's perspective, they saw this as a direct attack against them because the Americans and the Israelis were trying to cut what they call the arms of the Iranian octopus in order to come later and hit the head of this octopus and finish the job. This was a plan after the 2003 war against Iraq. They wanted to invade Iran, but they were stuck in the mud of Iraq, and this project has become delayed and postponed, and it had different shapes and forms. For example, the regime change war in Syria, the war against Gaza, and now the attempted crushing, let's say, of Hezbollah. This is the strategic goal in order to cut all the arms of the Iranian octopus in this case. However, this Iranian retaliation, in my opinion, will reshuffle the schedule of the regional war, which the Israelis and the Americans have planned for, and they were implementing it on their own schedule, and this schedule will be shuttered now. And however, this will not actually end the possibility of a regional war, because in my opinion, unfortunately speaking, this is inevitable. And now the Iranians understand that this is the plan. So they have struck back against the Israelis. But not only against the Israelis, they have also sent a message inside Iran, because this is also important, that the so-called reformists, they were trying to reach to another deal with the West. They're talking about a nuclear deal again, in exchange for sanctions relief and also ceasefire in Gaza. And then the president of Iran says that, oh my God, we believe the West again and they betrayed us. In Arabic, they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I think this is universal. It's not only in Arabic. Now, what is going to happen next? This is the real and serious question. I think that the Israelis have two options now. They could either say that the Iranian attack has failed and Netanyahu could climb down the tree, or they would respond in a harsh way, and this will lead into counter-responses from Iran, and this will all lead to a regional war. If you ask my opinion, I don't think that Netanyahu will swallow this strike. It was a big strike. It was a humiliating strike, and it has led to the destruction of several military installations in Israel with precision attacks. And it has also shown to the world that the Iron Dome of Israel is not really functional against ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles. So, in order to break this image again in the eyes of the international public that Israel is an invincible force, I think that Netanyahu will go to retaliation. But this is just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts on this case. Go and have a conversation with me in the comments below. There's an important thing that happened after the retaliation of Iran, and that is the visit of the President Putin's special envoy to Syria. His name is Alexander Lavrentiev, to Iran, and he held talks with Ali Akbar Ahmadian. He is the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. And during the talks, Lavrentiev expressed hope that Israel would heed Iran's warning. So I think that Israel took this message as a tacit support for Iran's attack against the retaliatory attack against Israel. And what happened yesterday in this context, and this is very important, that a huge attack happened in Syria. So this was in the early morning, large-scale airstrikes in the city of Jableh near Russia's Hmeimim airbase in western Syria on the coast. For the past hour, Syrian and Russian air defenses have been jointly intercepting enemy projectiles. The target and culprit are still unclear, but local sources talk about possibly a Russian ammunition depot being the target. Now, in my opinion, this is what I published today on X. Let me just check. Yeah. So Israel's recent large-scale military attack or military aggression on the Syrian coast near the city of Jableh could mark a significant turning point in the ongoing regional conflict. This attack followed a meeting on Wednesday between Alexander Lavrentiev, Russian President Vladimir Putin's special envoy to Syria, and Ali Akbar Ahmadian, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. So during the talks, Lavrentiev, he said that he hopes that Israel would heed Iran's warnings. So Israel appears to have interpreted this meeting along with Lavrentiev's statements as tacit Russian approval of Iran's retaliatory actions. Consequently, Israel targeted warehouses of the Russian forces. Now, this is important. Now, some people say that no, this was not a Russian depot, or it belonged to Iran or to Hezbollah. Look, these warehouses have been hit very, very close to the Russian forces. So whether they were Hezbollah or Iran depot or Syrian army depot or Russian depot, I think eventually this was the message to Russia itself. And I think this likely explains the joint response from the Syrian and Russian air defenses, marking a departure from previous Israeli strikes where Russia had refrained from directly involving in the defense efforts. Previously, there were many times that Israel attacked and bombed the coast of Syria, and Russia didn't intervene. But this time intervened, and they fired some of their air defenses. So this is also a big question mark why the Russians intervened. So probably or likely the Russians received the message, the military message from Israel, and they wanted to retaliate or repel this attack. Following the conclusion of the attack at 5:50 a.m., a Russian air patrol was observed over Latakia. The Israeli strike on a Russian facility in Syria is a serious escalation. Netanyahu's actions suggest he is no longer solely confronting the axis of resistance, but is also risking Russian interests. Should Moscow choose to respond, it could dramatically alter the balance of power in the region. So, this was the news that I wanted to report to you before I start answering to your questions. I hope there are many questions to answer. And I'm going to go up in the chat and try to. So, did you hear the news of the Russian Foreign Ministry advising Russia to leave occupied Palestine? I have seen this in the press and on social media platforms. And logically, I don't know. I didn't go to the website of the Russian Foreign Ministry to verify it. But logically speaking, I think the Russians know that this is going to expand in the region, and their residents or their nationals in Israel could become could become in jeopardy, could be living under fire. So, if the Russians can foresee the future, and of course they can, because remember, just a few hours before Iran's retaliatory attack against Israel, Vladimir Putin he was in an emergency meeting in the Kremlin with his security and defense officials, and they were discussing this retaliatory attack of Iran because they knew that it is going to come. Just like the Pentagon, they declared a few hours before the attack that they are predicting an imminent attack from Iran. So the Russians also have their satellite imagery, and they have also their intelligence in the region. And I'm sure they know that this is not going to stop anytime soon, and they know that Netanyahu is going to retaliate in a harsher way, and this will lead into another cycle of retaliation, this time from Iran. And therefore, this is the snowball effect in the region. So the Russians probably are asking their nationals to leave Israel. So, no, Ali, this has nothing to do with the attack on Hmeimim today. If you're asking me why the Russians ask their nationals to leave, this is about Iran and Israel. So, it is often said in case of a regional war, Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz and destroy the oil facilities in the Gulf. Iran has the capability to do so, but would Iran's allies to allow this? This is a perfect, really, really good question, actually. First of all, I think that in a case of a regional war, even in a case of a regional war, in such a scenario, not Iran wouldn't use all its cards at once, which means that if Iran is exclusively fighting against Israel and behind it, of course, the United States, the targets will most probably be the territory of Israel, or what is called Israel at the moment, their military facilities, their intelligence apparatuses, etc., and also the American military assets, namely in Iraq, because in Iraq, remember, they have a strong leverage, and there is the PMO, the Popular Mobilization Forces. They have resistance forces affiliated with Iran or supported from Iran. You have the Yemenis. You have also in Lebanon. So the retaliation, I think, that it would be against the American forces in Syria, for example, in Al Tanf border crossing, in the Konoko oil fields, in Iraq, for example, in the security zone in Baghdad, and also against probably the warships or the aircraft carriers if these warships and aircraft carriers carry attacks on Iran. But closing the Strait of Hormuz, as you mentioned, it will have global consequences, ramifications, even against the allies of Iran. So I don't think that Iran will go from the first stage to close the Strait of Hormuz. They could try to close the Strait of Hormuz or impose a blockade there if and when there is an existential threat against Iran. This could come in later stages. I don't think that the Iranians will go and close the Strait of Hormuz as a first stage. Do you think there will be a regional war in the Middle East? No, if I say yes or no, I could be both wrong, right? But this is just my analysis. And again, I could be wrong in this. I think all the indications show that we are already in a regional war, right? This is a regional war, but there are levels for the regional war. And if we want to define what is regional war, it is already ongoing. But if we're speaking of an all-out confrontation between Iran, its allies, and the United States and its allies, I think we are headed to this direction. We are headed to this direction. And during such times, probably these sides have to have a direct confrontation. I'm not an advocate for it. I'm just saying, judging from the cycle of history, I'm saying probably they have to have a direct confrontation for everyone to understand where the balance of power lies. But simply speaking, we're already in a regional war, but if we're expected, like, let's say, direct engagement between these different axes, we're headed towards there. Like, it's always like it's a process. It doesn't happen all of a sudden, right? But during such times, there could be miscalculations, there could be missteps, there could be some misfiring, or something very urgent happens, and some of the players could jump, let's say, some of the stages and go to the last one. Did Israel bomb a Russian ammo depot? I just addressed this case, and I said that there was an arm depot very close to the Russian airbase. Some reports say this was Russian depot. Other reports say this was Hezbollah or Syrian army depot. We don't know exactly, like there is no stamp on it to see whose depot was that. But this was, in my opinion, a message to Russia after the visit of the Russian president special envoy to Syria to Iran, and his statement from Iran that he hopes that Israel would listen to the warning of Iran, because from the Israeli perspective, this could be interpreted as a tacit green light of Russia to Iran to attack Israel in this case. So, Russian Syrian base. The source of the bombing is not yet confirmed, but it reportedly involved 3 missiles fired from naval battleships. I can assure you with great confidence, my friend, that this was from the Mediterranean and it was Israeli hostile objects, because I can hear some comments or some reports from journalists in Syria and also outside Syria that they say or claim that this attack came from Idlib, and the Ukrainian intelligence, they have trained Al Qaeda to send these drones. And I can assure you with great confidence that this is not the case. It was Israeli attack. Hi, Kevork. Are the rebels going to attack the Syrian army when Israel escalates the situation more? Can we expect a second wave of insurgency from Idlib, or will the SAA be able to handle the situation? First of all, the so-called jihadists, these insurgents, they are already attacking the Syrian army now in northern Latakia, in Aleppo, and in the front line in Idlib. And this is an instruction, in my opinion, from the US to destabilize the region again in order to push the Syrian army into a conflict with these terrorists and keep it on the sideline when or if a regional war erupts. So this is the plan of the US. However, I also believe that the Syrian army has enough resources and enough military power to repel all these attacks. However, in case of an all-out war, and if Syria is going to participate in a direct war with Israel, this is going to be very, very tricky for Syria, because the Syrian army is overstretched over the geography, and there are multiple front lines against these terrorists that the Americans are using them as a leverage against Syria and against Iran. So, after Israel attacked Russian base in Syria, will Russia get involved? No. Russia, when the Russian forces intervened in 2015 in Syria, they have said previously, before they intervened to Syria, to Damascus, to Tehran, that they have no interest whatsoever to participate in the ongoing struggle of power over the region between Israel, the US, the UK, the rest of the collective West, vis-a-vis Syria, Yemen, Iraq, Iran, etc. They said we have no interest. We want to have good relationship with everyone. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past, because remember, in the past, under the Soviet Union, the United States supported Israel, and the Soviet Union supported Egypt, supported Syria, supported the rest of the players against Israel. They don't want to do that any longer. They want to have good relationship with everyone. Now, if the situation moves from let's say, attacks against Syrian army positions or near the Russian forces without having direct impact on the Russian assets and the Russian interests in Syria, the Russians will not intervene. So, unless Israel comes and directly threatens the Russian interests in Syria, we're speaking of huge interests. First of all, geopolitical, the naval force of Russia in the Mediterranean, the gas fields in the Mediterranean, the current political system in Syria, represented by President Bashar al-Assad, which guarantees these interests of Russia in Syria, then Russia will not intervene. So unless there is a direct threat to Russian interests in Syria, not only against some positions in the country, the Russians will not intervene. The moderate rebels got drones from Ukraine in exchange for fighters for Ukraine. Did they use them against Syria yet? And what can be done about it? I don't know. Like these reports, I have heard of them a lot. I don't think that these so-called insurgents need assistance from Ukraine. They already have supply lines from Turkey, which comes from the UK, from the United States, from Turkey itself, and from Israel, and from other sources. They don't need the Ukrainian assistance to operate drones against the Syrian army. They already have this technology, and there is a direct supply line from different powers and different supply chains, including non state actors. Therefore, this talk about direct Ukrainian intervention in Syria, in my opinion, it's exaggerated. For context, because the Ukrainians already they have a big shortage of manpower in Ukraine in their existential fight against Russia. So sending their intelligence assets or operatives to Syria, it's suicidal. They could do it. I'm not saying no, but the exaggeration of this, there is an exaggeration that there is a huge presence of Ukrainian intelligence in Syria. No, I think that these so-called insurgents, they don't need the Ukrainians. They already have enough support from, especially from the MI6 and the UK, and they will operate these drones against the Syrian army. So the intervention of Ukraine in this conflict, it's very minimal in my opinion compared to the type and amount of support they receive from other sources. I mean, Ukraine, it needs support from the West to survive. Without Western support, the entire Ukrainian armed forces will crumble. So this fight for them is not a priority. Their fight, at least, should be in Ukraine. Did Hezbollah run out of drones already? No. This is the same question that people think that Hezbollah's missile capabilities, 50 to 60% has been destroyed according to Israeli reports. There is nothing like that. Is Israel trying to get southern Lebanon as their promised land? Yes, this is something that they already discussing in the Israeli press, and they say that so southern Lebanon, and then you have in southern Lebanon to the Litani River, this geography, they say that this is part of the promised land. However, the promised land doesn't have contact lines, and there is no concrete borders. And I think that if I'm not saying that this will happen, hypothetically speaking, if they occupy southern Lebanon to the line of Litani River, they will not stop there. They will continue occupying entire Lebanon because their project, which is what they say Greater Israel Project, is it extends from the Nile to the Euphrates River. So between Sinai, Egypt, to the Euphrates. And they also say that on the eastern border or the eastern bank shore of the Euphrates, this is according to the Zionist theoreticians, theorists, they say that the Kurdistan will be their neighbor. So now see what's happening in Syria on the eastern shore of the Euphrates. The US is trying to encourage the Kurds to have their own Kurdistan there, the Rojava. So they want to prepare the ground when the Greater Israel Project succeeds in their mind, of course, theoretically speaking or hypothetically, that their neighbors would be the Kurds because they intend on ethnically cleansing the rest, basically. How crumbled do you think is the Israel economy in reality, Kevork? Do you think they can survive another 5 years at this rate? Wow, this is a really good question. I'm not really an economist. However, we have to understand that the United States has over $35 trillion debt, public debt, and still it's functional, and it's still they can print money, and they are financing these wars in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and in Taiwan as well. So you have the empire has three major front lines now. It's Israel, it's Ukraine, and it's Taiwan. And in these three places, they are financing. Israel alone whether its economy is strong or not, they cannot survive. They cannot sustain another 5 years. But with American support, with Western support, political, financial, military, they could continue fighting unless there is a scenario of a big regional war, an all out war, because then the destruction will be direct and imminent against Israel. And this is a scenario when Israel cannot survive, in my opinion. So, 5 years rate, it depends on the type of the conflict that we are going to witness in the next few months or few years. So, I'm checking. Would Nasrallah have agreed to a ceasefire? This is a comment being posted by the foreign minister of Lebanon. And Nasrallah himself, I don't think that he would have accepted the ceasefire separate from a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. If there was a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, he would have accepted a ceasefire in Lebanon, but not a temporary one. Because the French and the Americans, they spoke about 3 weeks of a ceasefire. And we all know what it means for Israel, 3 weeks of ceasefire from the Gaza scenario, and how they can reinforce their intelligence assets and their military assets, and then to continue this conflict, right, against their enemies. So, from my understanding of Hezbollah's mentality, I don't think that Nasrallah would have accepted a 3 weeks temporary ceasefire and detached from a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. He asked clearly for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. He says when it happens in Gaza, the firing from Lebanon would stop. So, were all the Iranian Shahid drones sent to no, what do you mean by all? Of course not. I think that Iran has tens of thousands of these Shahid drones. And there is something called the strategic um, military assets of any country. I will give you an example. Now, during the war in Syria, people were expecting for the Syrian army to use its precision or technologically sophisticated missiles, rockets against the insurgents. But the Syrian army leadership, in their mind, they understood that this is going to be a long war. So draining these strategic assets against the so-called insurgents would have dire consequences against Syria if there is a scenario of a war with Israel. So in only few exceptions, Syria used its, let's say, homemade, sophisticated, technologically sophisticated weapons against these insurgents or the terrorists. The rest, they used what they call these barrel bombs, for example, because they call them like a barrel bombs. But those are types of bombs that were used during World War II, for example. They are unguided, but they were used during World War II because they didn't want to drain the strategic depot of the Syrian army against the insurgents because they knew those are proxies. And then when they defeat the proxies, the main players, Israel, the United States, could intervene in Syria and cause heavy damage to the Syrian security. So, no, Iran is not stupid to send all its Shahid drones to Russia. Of course, they would secure their strategic military assets. And what is when there is an overproduction, then yes, they could send the overproduction to Russia. Stepping back and looking at this as a whole, does it seem that this was all about taking out Russia and Iran? This was all about taking out Iran, yes. Well, every step that has happened, every security event that has happened after October 7 was planned and directed against Iran. And I was surprised to see people were saying after October 7, like 1 or 2 days later, that this is going to lead into war between Iran and Iran and Israel. I didn't understand it, but now you see the direction. Yes, it is all directed at Iran. Now, Eurasia, it stands, whoever controls Eurasia controls the world. And if you see Eurasia nowadays, it has three major powers: Russia, China, and Iran. So they are encircling three of these powers. There is a front line against Russia in Ukraine. And now there is a front line against Iran in the Middle East, and they're trying to open another front. They are still in the trade war against China, but they are attacking these three Eurasian powers in the region. So, of course, this is about the status of the US and its hegemonic status. And the US wants to keep its absolute hegemony over Eurasia. They already have entire Europe, I don't want to say in their pockets, but under their umbrella. So this is something that is very important for them to keep these three countries busy in constant conflicts and also keep them apart from each other. This is very, very important. Today I watched or listened and watched to Russian pranksters. They pranked Mike Pompeo, the former CIA head of CIA and the former Secretary of State of the US. And they were asking him about the US strategy vis-a-vis Russia. And he says something like, oh, this is not a smart strategy. We have to stop the war in Ukraine so that we convince Russia that its future is with the West in order to decouple them from China. This is the reverse Kissinger strategy in the 70s and the 80s. They turned Russia, the Soviet Union, and China against each other, and they supported China against Russia. And now they want to decouple them again from each other and turn Russia against China. But I think that the Russians and the Chinese have matured enough during the past decades not to fall to this trap again over and over again. Will Russians start to oppose openly Israel, for example, by using their anti-missile systems to bring down Israeli? No, 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 that's not going to happen. Or giving high-quality weapons to resistance, or giving Iran nukes? No, of course not. The Russians are not going to give nukes to Iran for sure. Iranians do not need nuclear weapons from Russia. They can develop their own if they want to. And Russia is not interested in shooting down Israeli jets, but they could give the allies of the axis of resistance or the players of the axis of resistance higher quality of weapons or knowledge. Because remember, the Ansarullah movement, when they fired one of their hypersonic missiles, we don't know yet if this was an Iranian technology or a Russian technology. There are speculations. But of course, the Russians maybe would share some of this technological knowledge to Iran or to Syria or to others, and these players could develop their own weapons based on Russian knowledge and technology. But the Russians are not interested to come and fight. They have their own already strategic and existential fight against NATO from the door of Ukraine. Is Gallant dead? Another chief of staff has been giving public statements. I don't think he is dead, my friend. If he was dead, we would have known about it. I'm checking for question marks. Was Netanyahu shaking because he would heard that Gallant was killed? I don't know if Gallant is killed, really. If it's killed, just let me know in the comments. I'm not sure about that. Kevork, we should not confuse the war in Gaza and Lebanon. It is an American war with the Israeli army. Yes, I agree, my friend. Leave the engagement, folks. Kevork works hard for us. Thank you so much, my friend, for your kind comments. Sometimes just leave the, let's say, trashy comments, right? There are some people comment, they're just, you cannot really, how to say, Ali bin Abi Talib once said, "Ma naqashtu jahilan wa illa ghallabani." It's like when you have someone who is ignorant, right? And he's a troll, and you want to discuss this person, and his intellectual capacity is here, and your intellectual capacity is here. Do you think that this person can come up and discuss with you? No. So you have to come down to the level of this person. So engaging with this low level of trashy comments, it's just it harms the purpose of this channel, which is educational, and it also you're wasting your time with them, right? So your time is valuable. Don't engage with them. And I don't want to ban and block anyone from this channel. I just said that multiple times everybody is free. I'm a free speech absolutist. Unless somebody comes and insults, humiliates my guest or myself, like personally, like you're not engaged in political talk, you're just calling me names or something, then okay. So, what are the Druze saying in Lebanon? So, I'm not so surprised, but it's still surprising that Walid Jumlat, who is the was, let's say, the leader of he's still, of course, leads the biggest Druze community in Lebanon. He sided with Hezbollah in this conflict, and he says that he is 100% with the resistance against the Israeli occupation. Unfortunately, Lebanon is a sectarian, divided country, and when a leader says, then we are today with the resistance, everybody in his community becomes with the resistance. And in 2005, when Walid Jumlat, he's himself, this is the same guy, when he turned against Hezbollah and against Syria, and his community also turned against Syria and Hezbollah. So it's all about what the leader says. Question: why can't the United States and the EU give their homes to Israelis and stop asking Palestinians to do it for them? Go and ask the Americans and the Europeans, my friend. I'm not going to comment on this because then in 6 a.m. in the morning, the Polizei, the German police, will not even knock my door. They will break my door and come and take me away. What is your theory on how the Israelis got the location of Nasrallah? Very good question. First of all, I was not shocked that he was assassinated because they wanted to assassinate him for a long time, but I was shocked that he was assassinated in the suburbs of Beirut. This is a very exposed region. It is infiltrated by spies, by satellite images, by lots of technological tools that they were listening, recording, documenting every step. So there could be several scenarios. There could be, of course, technological breach, which Jared Kushner, I think he said a few days ago that 10 months ago, they were able, thanks to technological infiltration, to detect the internal communication of Hezbollah, and they located Nasrallah and they killed him. And there could also be human factor, right? And the human factor could be in Lebanon, could be in Iran, could be in Syria, could be anywhere. So, look, this story, we will only learn the full and comprehensive story a few years later. When this conflict is over, you will find people with direct knowledge and they will speak about it. Now, it's all speculations. Some experts think that NATO allies are faking their loss of control over Israeli regime and they're using this situation to reshape the Middle East and bring it under their total control. I totally agree with you, Van. I don't believe for a second that the United States has no leverage over Israel. And I don't believe for a second when the US sets a red line that they're incapable of imposing their land. I don't believe for a second. The military support that the US supplies to Israel, were it not for this military support, Israel cannot fight this fight. So they have a huge leverage over Israel's existence. And the US is manipulating the public by saying that they are for diplomacy and for ceasefire. If they were for a ceasefire, why did they use their veto 4 or 5 times in the UN Security Council? If they were for a ceasefire, they would have pressed the Israelis to accept at least temporary ceasefire in Gaza and in Lebanon, but they are not. The ceasefire talks are a theater, are an opportunity to buy time for Israel. But every time, I think everybody should understand this, every time there is a ceasefire talk, there is a big escalation from the Israeli side, and in every stage of this so-called ceasefire talks, there was an escalation by Israel. So I don't believe for a second that the Americans are interested in ceasefire agreement in the region. They're using Israel in order to impose their dominance over the Arabic world, because in their mind, the future has to be that Iraq, Syria, Lebanon must normalize ties with Israel and end the Palestinian question completely, which means the Palestinians will either be ethnically cleansed or they will be genocided. There is no other way to do that. So Americans are all the way in the Israeli wagon in this. And anyone who says otherwise, personally, I would find that suspicious. I'm checking for other questions. So, David, do you think that Iran's warning that it might be forced to strike the oil production facilities in the region as a credible threat? I explained this at the beginning, my friend. Yes, I find it credible, but not at the first stage of the conflict with the US or with Israel. This could come at a later stage if there is an existential threat against Iran. At the beginning, Iran has no interest in turning Saudi Arabia against them, at least like direct confrontation, or in Qatar, or in the UAE, or in Bahrain, or no. For them, the focus is on the US and on Israel, and they have lots of sitting ducks in the region. So the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth steps will definitely be directly against American assets, the American bases in Iraq, in Syria, and also in Israel. So, but when all these options are exhausted and there is an existential threat against Iran, then probably they would take this option. Yes. So I'm checking for more questions from you. Israel. Da, da, da. It's been confirmed Israel attacked the Russian airbase. I don't know if you're confirming my statement or there is a new information while I am now in the live streaming, because now if I open my Facebook, I could probably see if there was something like this. I don't know. But, I don't see much. So we will check that for later. Other questions, my friends. So Hanin says Israel carried out airstrike against Russian AD systems around Hamamim Air Base and an unidentified ammunition depot. This is by Middle East Spectator. So this was my source, anyways, from the beginning. Some people disputed my sources, and they even said that no, this was from Idlib. This were like the Al Qaeda. Do people really think that these Al Qaeda types they are able to carry out such a large scale 2 hour attack with precision attacks against armed depots near the Russian bases? No sane person should believe this. This is an Israeli operation for sure, 100%. So I'm reading the comments very fast, but looking for question marks. So, question: why can't the United States and EU give? I already answered these questions. You want me to go to jail, my friend? What's wrong with you? So, trying to intimidate him on Alex Reportify, and he didn't apologize to Lira. I don't know what is this, but I'm finding some question marks to check. So, do you see Israel attacking Iranian nuclear plants? I don't myself, as Iran could do exactly the same thing. I think, again, this is the same talking point of is Iran going to bomb the oil refineries in Saudi Arabia? Like when you see a conflict, there are stairs. Like you don't really jump the stairs, right? And in this case, if I'm saying I don't believe that the Israelis will bomb the Iranian nuclear plants, but if they do that, then the retaliation will be against their nuclear plants. Yes. But I don't think that the Israelis are that stupid to bomb the Iranian nuclear facilities. They could bomb some of their refineries, let's see, or bomb their some military facilities, airports, air defenses, intelligence assets, etc. But hitting the nuclear, not now. But I could be wrong, by the way. You know, the who's ruling Israel is not like someone who is very rational. This was an order, not really advice. Wasn't there over 1,000 dual passport Russian Israeli forces? Will they be allowed back after serving a non-allied nation? I don't know this question, my friend. I can't really answer a question that I really don't know the answer. Kevork, is Algeria in Palestinian helping humanitarian building? I don't like, you mean like, is Algeria supporting Palestine in humanitarian aid? Yes, Algeria always supported the Palestinians, unlike other Arabic countries. Can you please explain the Russian defense systems S-400s? Because it's my understanding that Iran will be using this defense, because I hear it far superior. Yes, it is definitely far so superior than the Iron Dome. Was not designed to intercept the cruise missiles or ballistic missiles. It was designed to shield the Israeli air from the rockets, Katyushas, the Fatah, and these small rockets from Gaza or from Lebanon. But they were not designed to shield Israel from these long range cruise ballistic missiles or hypersonic missiles. But the S-400s, they are capable of detecting, intercepting these long-range missiles from Israel, including, I think they have the nuclear-capable missile called Jericho. So S-400 definitely is capable of detecting. They need the radars, and they can detect it and also intercepting them. However, do we really know for 100% certainty that Russia supplied the S-400s to Iran? Do we know for 100% certainty? We don't know. There are reports and also Iranian reports, but have we seen one satellite imagery of S-400 in Iran? Personally, I didn't. So if you guys seen it, let me know in the comments. What do you think of Jordan shooting down missiles for Israel? So you think the people will raise up and punish him? There is something that people, I want them to know, that when the colonizers, the French and the Brits, divided the Middle East for their own interests in the region, Jordan was and still a very important British asset in the region. And there are multiple reports, investigations, analysis that the kingdom of Jordan is a British colony, just like it was Israel was, or before that Palestine was a British colony, right? And then they divided it to Palestine and Israel. So Jordan, as organically, structurally, belongs to the British Empire previously and now to the Americans. So even if the king of Jordan doesn't want to participate in intercepting Iranian missiles, he has to. He's not free. He is not independent. He is dependent. His entire rule is dependent on this American and British financial and military support. They don't have popular legitimacy. And 60% of the Jordanians are Palestinians, right? Do you really think that the Palestinians would support such a kingdom? So it's all about the foreign support. The same thing goes to Egypt. Do you really think that the Egyptian army now wants to help Israel? No. There are so many honorable people in the Egyptian army, right? But their hands are cuffed, and they have so many security agreements with the US and the Camp David Accords that they have become dependent on US foreign aid. And the Egyptian economy is in complete shatters. And the hyperinflation there, and it's a really bad situation. So imagine if now Egyptians intervened also in I'm not giving them justifications, right? But this is the situation. Their hands are cuffed and they're completely dependent. They're not sovereign over such decisions. So more questions. I don't know why people are talking about Haitians in Ohio. We're just talking about Israel, Middle East, and what do you think about Jordan helping? I just answered this question, exactly that. And the Iranian Putin has gifted 5 memberships for member for 5 months. He became a member for. Thank you so much, the Iranian. Do you have the Iranian Putin? We have Bashar Assad in this chat now. All the conspiracies against this channel. So at meeting in Doha, Qatar, Saudi, etc., assured Iran absolute neutrality. Do you believe it? I don't understand the question. At meeting in Doha, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, etc., assured Iran's absolute neutrality. So they are neutral? No, they're not neutral. Of course not. Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Qatar, first of all, is designated officially by the US Foreign Ministry as a major non NATO ally. And now the same thing goes for the UAE. And Saudi Arabia will become the same thing, but they are trying to persuade Saudi Arabia to sign this normalization deal with Israel. And Saudis are saying first two-state solution. I mean, who believes there is still a two-state solution scenario? There is no. I mean, Saudis are speaking about things that have become really like fantasies, like. Thank you so much, Alex, for your generous support, my friend. I really appreciate it. I also would like to, Johan, Kevork, what do you think will be the future of Armenia after Pashinyan's treacherous handshake with Erdogan at New York? I mean, I'm very happy that you're asking this question, and I think many Armenians do not see that Armenia has become a Turkish colony, and there is Erdogan has a strong grip over Armenia nowadays, and basically Armenia is following the Turkish strategic interests in the region under Pashinyan. Therefore, I mean, if you ask me, I think that Armenians will lose more territories to Azerbaijan. Unfortunately speaking, I'm ethnic Armenian, right? I cry from inside every time Armenia loses territories. But every time I warn the Armenians have to do what they have to do in Armenia itself. It's not. I cannot really tell them to. Urge them, let's say, to take a political action, then I will be considered like inciting against national security of Armenia. And if I go to Armenia, they could detain me, and they will detain me if I say something like this. But Armenians also share a responsibility for what's happening in their own country. And from 2018, after the colored revolution in Armenia till today, is there any person with minimum understanding in politics who can't see what's happening now and how Armenia lost Karabakh and how they lost their entire national security in Armenia, and they're now exposed to the Azeris? And now that Azerbaijan wants to open this corridor inside Armenian territories, and the only country in the region, in the Caucasus, opposing this is Iran. Even the Russians are not opposing it, but Iranians are. And the Armenians are not cooperating enough with the Iranians. They're cooperating more with the NATO side. So there is something that is illogical, like you can shoot your leg, probably the left leg once, and then when you shoot your right leg, then this is no longer about miscalculations but about betrayal and treason, because this is calculated and it is meant to happen. And this is what Pashinyan is doing, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Abi, also for your support. I will check. Hi, Kevork, do you see Turkey finally cutting off the oil to Israel? No. Turkey is not only sending oil, it is a corridor for the Azerbaijani gas. So Azerbaijan is also supporting Israel in this case. Both the look, Erdogan has a big mouth, and he keeps talking about doing this and that for the Islamic Ummah, for Palestine. But give me one example of Erdogan giving tangible support to the Palestinians to continue their struggle against Israelis. Name one, except for the rhetoric, right? He will not. He will not. He's playing a double game. Erdogan is playing a double game between the East and the West, and he wants to get the maximum from everyone, from the BRICS, from NATO, from the EU. He's a good businessman, and he could be good for his own country, but not for the Palestinians. And unfortunately, so many Palestinians believe that Erdogan is going to be some sort of a liberator. Checking more questions. We're already over 1 hour, but remember, China is tied to Iranian oil, as are many Asian countries. Does Israel want a Russo-Chinese hammer? What do you mean? Does Israel want a you mean like a reaction from Russia and China? I mean, so many people are asking this question. Where is China from this? I think the Chinese leverage is too big over Iran and over Israel at the moment to intervene as stabilizer in the region. But the Chinese are still think that they don't have enough leverage. This is in their mind. But I disagree with them. And the United States has lost all its credibility as a mediator. And the Chinese, the same way they presented themselves as a mediator between Iran and Saudi Arabia, they can do that in the region, but not in a way to keep the status quo. Please remember that the continuation of Israel the same way in this Zionist ideology that they want to expand and kill the subhumans and Untermenschen, like, all these terminologies that we have heard in the past few months, and trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque to build the Temple Mount and then expel the Palestinians from the West Bank and kill the Palestinians in Gaza. This cannot sustain. I posted today something on X, and I don't know why this is so controversial for some people, which is it shouldn't be at all. And this is what I said. And I truly believe in this. I think that this is the only solution out of this conflict. I said, as a Syrian Christian of Armenian ethnicity, I want Jews, Christians, Muslims, atheists, and all the people to live side by side in Palestine under a rule of law that guarantees equal treatment for everyone. This shouldn't be a controversial talking point, but it is, because under Zionist rule, this is impossible to be implemented. Kevork, do you think this regional war will escalate to World War III as Trump wants to attack Iran when he gets in office? I think this is, when you see this, the sequence of events in the past few months, and you see how they even in the mainstream media, they're trying to prop up Trump to come to power, and how these assassination attempts have been undergone against him, it all leads to the same direction, and that is they want for Trump to come to power. And with this big escalation now in the region that precedes the elections in the US, it all sends me the signal that probably there are forces who want for Trump to come to power and execute this war against Iran. So we are 1 month away from the elections. If Trump comes to power, then this will definitely escalate more in the region. Definitely, he will try to. I have read the conspiracy theory about why Trump doesn't he wants to end the war in Ukraine. I mean, the logical explanation for me now, since I also watched these pranksters who pranked Mike Pompeo, who is from the same school of thought of Trump, that they want to do this, they want to stop the war in Ukraine to decouple China from Russia. But there is another conspiracy theory that is they want to stop the war in Ukraine because they want to focus on the war against Iran. They want to help Israel in this war against Iran. And all the events happening in the US and bringing religion, especially Zionist Christianity, into the discussion and the debate. And you see Jordan Peterson with, what was his name? The other day I watched a video of Jordan Peterson with this podcaster who was accused now of rape and stuff. They're praying and like all these sentiments, bringing religion again into the discussion, it just leads to the same direction. It's like they're trying to شو التنويم المغناطيسي, like they're trying to sometimes even I تنويم مغناطيسي, like they're trying to hypnotize the people into a more religious approach, and then present Trump like he's a savior of Christianity. And this is all, in my opinion, Zionist approach. They are trying to indoctrinate the people to accept a holy war in the region to destroy Iran. This is just my interpretation. It is not the Arab people's fault. It's their governments. What does the United States have to do with this? I don't know. What is the question? So, hi, Albi, what do you think the Israelis will do in retaliation, not just in Iran, but to the axis as a whole. So I think that if you ask me, of course, I think that the Israelis will bomb some of the militias in the border crossings between Iraq and Syria. They will consider them those on Iranian linked, Iranian affiliated forces, and they could also probably sabotage or wage electronic warfare against Iran to turn off electricity, to sabotage their nuclear program, or hit some of their military assets or military installations inside Iran. But this will lead definitely into another response from Iran. So this is the snow effect that we have spoken of. This is definitely leading into a major war between Israel and the Iranians. So I think I have to answer only a few more questions and then end this. You know why? Because I have forced myself to have a schedule, and I go to the gym almost 5 days per week, and I have to be in the gym in like 50 minutes. And I do 2 hours of training almost 5 days per week. And then I come back, I eat something, I sleep, and I come back in the morning, work again. Because once I miss or pass my schedule, then the entire second day would be also in shatters. I know the analysts are not mind readers, but if Russia wasn't busy in Ukraine, would the Gaza and region attacks by US and look different? In fact, no. No, my friend. Russia nowadays is completely different from the Soviet Union, and they have a big Jewish community also in Russia, and there are big Jewish oligarchs in Russia, and Putin himself has good relationship with Netanyahu. There are so many other calculations. Are defense technology industries prolonging the genocide to further field test? Yes, 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 100%. My friend, you don't know how dirty is the AI role in this conflict now in Gaza and in Palestine. They have AI softwares, for example, Lavender, and they are executing like a kill spree. Like there are entire neighborhoods and communities have been wiped out of existence just by software. The human intervention was very minimal. The last, like when you just click on the enter, that's it. We're headed to, it's very dystopian now already. We are not headed anywhere. It's already dystopian. Hey, what's up, man? I would like to ask you, but I don't mean any disrespect. Aren't you in a capitalist country? Why not live in Syria or in non-capitalist country to non? Who said that I'm against Germany or I'm? Look, my friend, my criticism is against foreign policies, right? When the German or the American foreign policy becomes normal against the people of the region, at the end of the day, I am born and raised in Syria. I have an Armenian ethnicity. My grandparents survived the Armenian genocide. And I know what death means and what genocide means and what ethnic cleansing means. So I feel the responsibility and the urge to speak for the people who are persecuted there, because I was there once and I have witnessed war, I have witnessed destruction, I have witnessed suffering and suffocation of the people and myself as well. I have lived under bombardment, I have lived without electricity, I have lived without money. Why do you think I'm doing these things? Because I feel for the people. And I'm not here to sabotage the good things in Germany or in the United States. In the contrary, when I came to Germany, I have become a good resident of Germany. I have presented to Germany. I worked, I learned the language, I pay my taxes, and I don't wish anything but good for Germany and for the country of the United States. However, when the politicians in these countries try to kill my people, it's also a human responsibility for me to criticize them. This is not, I'm not here to come and say, oh, I'm for a socialist Germany. Who am I to decide for the German people, right? However, it's not the job of the American politicians or the German politicians to impose their will on the rest of the world. We need equality because they preach about equality. We want also equal treatment in the region. We want to be treated as human beings. Therefore, I know that you don't mean any disrespect for me. Now that I live in Germany, it opened my eyes to so many things, and it matured me politically. So also my presence in Germany, and look, if I was in let's say I moved to China, how many people will come and tell me, oh, Habibi, you live in China, of course you're under the influence of the Chinese government, this and that, right? It's always like this. Whatever I say or whatever I do, there will be some criticism or some commentary about where do I live and what do I say. Now that I want to go, let's suppose I want to go back to Syria, right? You want me to go back to Syria. Okay, I agree with you. Give me back my country. Leave Syria. One third of Syria is occupied by the United States. Our border crossings are occupied with Turkey and with Iraq and Jordan. So we can't do business. We can't use our oil refineries and oil fields. We can't cook food. We can't have heating in our homes because the US occupies them. And we can't make money because we don't have enough electricity in the country due to the occupation of the oil fields to have an internet and electricity to sit and make some live streamings, right? And I can't even have a bank account. Like, people speak things like, it really bothers me. Give us our country back when we had banks, when we had internet, when we had electricity, when we had food. Then you will see refugees from Europe are going back to their countries. But you cannot come and occupy the country. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the US, destroying the country, the infrastructure, electricity, fuel, and impose sanctions and ban them from using banks. How can somebody live and make a living in such conditions? It's easy. The talk and typing is very easy. So I will check maybe one last question. Is Kevork able to see any Rumble questions? Yes, I'm checking all the questions, but I didn't see anything from Rumble, unfortunately. I'm checking the live chat here on my software, but I didn't see questions from Rumble, unfortunately. Wow, those are so many comments, man. I'm Syrian of Armenian ethnicity, my friend. So I think this was all for today, guys. I really apologize if I didn't answer any of your questions. If you want me to do another live streaming next week just to answer your questions, let me know in the comments below. Really, I can dedicate 1 day per week just for answering your questions. For example, let's say every Thursday Q&A or something. I'm more than happy to do that. So I really appreciate you for tuning in, guys. Before leaving this live streaming, if you liked it, please hit the like button, share this video with your friends. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen. Patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow. It's Friday, right? Tomorrow? Yeah, Friday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. I wish you peace. I wish upon your families peace. And salam.